Welcome to this session. In this session, we will learn how Mendeleev classified the elements by creating his Mendeleev periodic table. Dear students, you must have studied earlier that many scientists tried to classify elements and they were not much successful. But Mendeleev was the first scientist who we can say almost successfully classified elements which were known at that time. Russian scientist Dmitry Mendeleev, as he was known, during the period 1869 to 1872 gave us a periodic table, what we call today as the Mendeleev's periodic table. And during his time, there were 63 elements known, and what he did was he studied the property of these elements. He studied the properties of these elements, he studied the properties of the compounds, and he tried to understand the relation between the properties and the atomic masses. And finally, he came to certain conclusions. He summed up these conclusions in the form of a law which is called the Mendeleev's periodic law. What does it say? It tells us that the properties of the elements are the periodic functions of their atomic masses. As you can see in this law, there are three important parts. The first one, properties of the elements. When we say properties of the elements, they are the physical as well as the chemical properties. And when we say periodic functions, it means that it is something which repeats at regular intervals. And then we have the atomic masses. So from the statement that the properties of the elements are the periodic functions of their atomic masses, we can come to a fair conclusion. What he meant was that the properties of the elements are repeated at regular intervals and that they are dependent on their atomic masses. So what did Mendeleev do was actually he arranged the elements in their increasing order of atomic masses, and he organized the periodic table on the basis of their chemical properties as well as their physical properties. He tried to understand the molecular formula of the hydrides, oxides. He created, we can say in a better way, that he wrote the molecular formula of hydrides, oxides, understood the melting point, their densities, and then he arranged the elements in their increasing order of atomic masses, and he came to a conclusion in the form of a table. And this is a really wonderful table which he conceived at that time. His table consisted of 7 horizontal rows called periods. It also consisted of 8 vertical columns called groups. So you can count the vertical columns 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So these 8 vertical columns they call groups, and the 7 horizontal rows they call periods. And he, in this periodic table, at the top, as you can see, you have the compound written as R2O, R2O3. This the way he wrote this molecular formula looks little different from how we write, right? So today's periodic table, if you see, not only the periodic table, the elements which are there, the general formula we write as R2O, R2O3. Okay. Then Mendeleev kept on expanding his periodic table, and that is why when new elements were discovered, instead of 7, you can see here many number of horizontal rows. So he went on adding new elements to his periodic table as the elements were discovered. So finally, if you look into Mendeleev's periodic table, you can see that it shows us that there are 12 horizontal rows called periods, but the groups remain the same, that is 8 vertical columns called groups. So why we study Mendeleev's periodic table is because Mendeleev was the first scientist who was successful in classifying the elements known at that time. Again, I'd use the word fairly successful. Yes, there were some errors in his table, primarily because many elements were not discovered, like inert gases were not discovered, and his table was very good in terms of, like, we could classify elements, and many positions, if you see, they really work well, like elements with similar properties are in the same periodic table. That is why his periodic table we consider one of the best tables in the beginning, and what we have today is actually an extension of his periodic table. So hats off to Mendeleev and his intelligence that today we have a modern periodic table. Thank you for this session.